Massive thumbs up to you, people of the internet. Hello, Dom Lawson here. Recognise me? Probably not. Welcome to another, well, how can I describe it? Brilliant is the word, brilliant. Educational, informative, entertaining, pointless even, thing that I do. It's called The Iron Sandwich. Still regretting that. But basically it's me talking into a laptop for 10 minutes about a new record and telling you whether it's any good or not. Don't confuse opinions with facts, by the way, which people still seem to be doing on the internet. I'm not sure how long that's going to go on for. Hopefully it'll run its course eventually. Just having a little sip of coffee here. Yeah, I know. What kind of wanker admits to having Lungo cup? Who even knows what a Lungo cup is apart from wankers? Well, I do. And I'm a wanker, so there you go. Delicious, anyway. If there are any other Nespresso whores out there, it's Invivio Lungo, in case you're wondering. It's a new one, it's lovely. So today I will be rambling in a slightly upsetting fashion about the new album by Opeth, which is out on September the 30th on their own imprint, which I can't pronounce. Can't even remember what it is now. They've got some Swedish word. Check with them, not me. But through Nuclear Blast. And the album is called Sorceress. I mean, if you're even vaguely aware of what I do, if you've ever read any of the stuff that I've written, which, you know, doesn't seem terribly likely, but you might have done. If you have, then you'll probably know that Opeth are one of my favourite bands of all time. So, you know, we can kind of get, you know, anticipate some of the responses already, you know, and what's the point? They could release any old shit and you'd fucking say it was brilliant. Well, that's not really how it works when you're a grown-up, bless your heart, but also, you know, there's a grain of truth in that, you know. It's like if Iron Maiden made a really terrible album, I would probably prefer not to review it than to review it and say that Iron Maiden made a terrible album. But these videos aren't for that purpose. This is really just me talking rubbish, you know, just so you can kill 10 minutes of your day watching a fat man sweat. But yeah, I suppose the riposte to that, you know, to that suggestion that I would say was brilliant, even if it wasn't, is the fact is Opeth haven't ever released a load of old shit. So when they do, I shall be first in line to point it out. But I think it's highly unlikely because they're just not one of those bands. You know, I mean, I suppose you could argue that, you know, bands like Opeth and I suppose Mastodon to some degree, Tool, you know, some of these bands are kind of held in such reverence, you know, that by their fans, they kind of inspire such devotion that, you know, generally speaking, you will struggle to find damning reviews of their stuff, you know, but I think there's a reason for that, you know. I don't, you know, this idea that everyone's opinion is equally valid and that everyone, you know, all music has its own value, I think is a load of old toss, frankly. You know, I've heard plenty of music that, as far as I could tell, had absolutely no value at all, and I look forward to reviewing that kind of stuff for you as well, like that of Mice and Men album, that springs to mind. But anyway, the new Opeth album, Sorceress, is out on the 30th, as I say. And I suppose whenever a new Opeth album comes around, I guess those of us that care, our main thought is, I wonder what it'll be like this time, because they've never made two records that are the same, even though they are, you know, they do have certain trademarks, they have a recognisable sound, you kind of know it's Opeth when you hear them, but there's always, you know, the fact that they are known as a progressive metal band, or originally a progressive death metal band, and then I guess now a kind of heavy progressive rock band. You know, just the fact that the word progressive sits so comfortably around what Opeth do kind of says it all about the way they've evolved over the years, you know. And there have certainly been albums that have stood out over the years and kind of been seen as milestones, and obviously Blackwater Park is one. That was kind of the album that brought them to a wider audience. And I know that, you know, there is a degree of what's the word? Yearning, I suppose. There is a yearning amongst some fans. Sorry, I keep leaning forward, but it's just not comfortable today, this chair. I don't know why. You know, there are some fans that would quite like Opeth to go back to doing what they were doing 15 years ago, you know, when Michael was doing death metal vocals and there wasn't quite as much weird psychedelic proggy stuff in their sound. But I love that shit. So, you know, I've been totally down with everything they've done, really. I think the other big milestone, although it might not be regarded as a classic in the way the Blackwater Park is, was Heritage, which was 2 albums ago, where the death metal vocals disappeared for good, seemingly, and Michael Ackerfeld's songwriting definitely took a turn into more kind of experimental and proggy waters, and I personally love that record. I think it's as good as anything else they've done in many ways. But it was I suppose a transitional release, and so when Pale Communion came out a couple of years ago, 3 years ago now, is it? I don't know, can't remember. Not very good at doing my research on this stuff. Hang on, I've got a copy of it here. Let me have a look. So I was listening to it yesterday. This came out in 2000. And it's really small, the writing on this, 2014, so yeah, 2 years ago. Pale Communion came out. To me, it felt like a consolidation of what they were doing on Heritage, and in some ways it kind of reintroduced a bit of the heaviness and some of the perhaps more traditionally Opeth sounding stuff into the tunes, even though it also featured, some fairly radical stuff like the song River, for instance, which started off with sounding very much like Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, rather than a prog metal band. But as I say, each album that comes out is kind of this thing of, I wonder what they'll do this time. I wonder if it will veer off on a tangent, or whether it will be kind of more of the same but with new elements, or whether they'll make a kind of skiffle record. Who knows? I bet half of you don't even know what skiffle is, because you're not old enough. But anyway, the new album, Sorceress. So I've been listening to this pretty much on repeat for the last month, and I'm, to no one's surprise, I'm happy to confirm that it's really, really fucking good. It's a belter. And why is it good, Dom? I don't hear you cry. Well, I'll tell you why. I mean, apart from anything else, the band have evolved yet again. I think this is the interesting thing about Opeth, is that they do one of the many interesting things about Opeth, really. But the thing is that they pull their influences. You can hear a lot of the 70s prog rock and the folk rock and the psychedelia and the metal influences in what they do. But certainly over the last couple of albums, there's been a bit less of anything that I would describe as metal, really. Although they have, they've still always been heavy, but the guitar tones and the riffs themselves haven't really had very obvious roots in the metal that clearly the band grew up with, and that kind of informed their earlier albums. So I think the biggest surprise about Sorceress is how heavy parts of it are. And I'm just going to drink some more coffee. Hang on. I mean, particularly the title track, Sorceress, which kind of is great. It's a typical Opeth thing to do. After I can't remember what's the intro called, Persephone. There's an intro called Persephone, which is very beautiful. And then Sorceress kicks in, and Sorceress begins as a kind of crazy jazz, prog, fusion, jam thing that's going on with loads of keyboards in it, and it's mental. And you might think, oh God, they've gone off into jazz fusion territory. I'm not going to listen to this. I only like Blackwater Park. Well, it doesn't last that long. After about a minute, this massive crunching riff kicks in, and it's super, super fucking heavy and metal. It's got a real metal sound to it. Actually, it reminds me of a song called The Zoo by Scorpions, albeit in a completely different tempo and different rhythm, but it's got a real vibe of that about it, and it's crushing. It's brilliant. Of course, the thing with Opeth is that their songs evolve, within themselves, and so you don't get that for the entirety of the song, and then it evolves into other stuff, and it's just, I don't know, they do what they do so well that it's almost redundant trying to explain it. You've got to listen to the damn thing, because I might be able to, I have written a physical review of this, but it's difficult. They're a difficult band to pin down because there's so much going on in their music that it's not always obvious. It's not always easy to identify every single component part. And also, if that's what you're trying to do, then you're not really listening to music in the right spirit. You'll end up listening to it like some kind of awful, cynical music journalist, which is obviously not the way forward for anybody. But as ever, Sorceress is an album for people with a decent attention span and who actually want to listen to music rather than just have bangers on in the background while they do shots and go woohoo a lot, which is, as you can probably pick up, not my vibe at all. But anyway, I'll sort of rattle through the tracks quickly to tell you why this is so good. I mean, I'll tell you about my favourite tracks on it. There's tons of stuff on this album. If you like Opeth, I can't see any reason why you wouldn't love this album. It's not more of the same, but it's more of the same brilliant, inventive, progressive and imaginative music that has made them as popular as they are. They're headlining Wembley Arena in November, which is extraordinary for a band that play that kind of music. Whether they sell it out or not, I don't know, but it's I think it's brilliant. It's a glimmer of hope for those of us that like to listen to music that's actually interesting, rather than the same fucking bland, sterile 3.5 minute songs with cheesy, predictable melodies that so many other people seem to like. But anyway, for those of us that like the prog, there's a track called Will o' the Wisp, which is actually out there now. I believe you can listen to it on that internet, which owes a huge debt to Jethro Tull. I see that as a good thing. Others may not. I don't know, but it's very folky and it's acoustic, and it's a beautiful thing. I also like the fact that it's called Will o' the Wisp, which I interviewed the band recently, and I said, did you know that there was a cartoon in the 80s in the UK called Will o' the Wisp? And they looked at me as if to say, why the fuck would we know that? We were at school and we were in Sweden. So fair enough. But that was good. Kenneth Williams did the voices, in case you're interested. That's a brilliant song. What's my other favourite on the album? My other favourite on the album is Strange Brew, which I think is one of my favourite Opeth songs ever already. It's just an extraordinary thing. It's interestingly the longest track on the... It's not interesting, Dom, but it is the longest track on the album. It's nearly 9 minutes long. And it starts off with just this really beautiful and quite subtle and kind of poignant little piano melody, and which reappears later in the song to great effect. It kind of erupts into this huge kind of lead guitar thing. It's just genuinely exciting, and it kind of it's something that's always puzzled me when people that, I suppose, Limp Bizkit fans mainly, but people say that, progressive rock's so boring, the songs are so long. Well, yeah, but you can do more in a 10-minute song than you can in a 3-minute one, and the best progressive rock bands are the opposite of boring, in my opinion. They're bands that actually do interesting things with music that you probably haven't heard before, which is surely better than doing what you've heard before. I don't know. I just don't understand the mentality of people that just want the same fucking nonsense over and over again. But Strange Brew, yeah, brilliant song. It goes through several very distinct sections, but as Opeth have done very much in the past, it flows so beautifully and everything makes sense. Some of the changes in these songs are quite perverse, really, if you put them on paper. But in reality, it's the way they do it. It's incredibly smooth and stylish, and it all just sounds so natural and organic. I mean, they're one of the few bands that make music this complex and intriguing and intricate, but that can totally reproduce it live. And I think that's been fundamental to Opeth's appeal as well. You go and see them live and they sound phenomenal. It's not like a kind of half-assed version of a big kind of prog metal thing that they can't quite achieve when they hit the stage. They're reliably brilliant live, and the songs kind of take on another dimension when you see them live as well. But Strange Brew, heartily recommend that one. And the other song that I want to mention is sort of the closing track. There's a kind of little outro thing called Persephone Slight Return at the end of the album. But the closing track proper is called Era, and I would say it's as close to a straight ahead heavy metal song as Opeth have ever done, really. I mean, it's I guess it reminds me a little bit. I mean, in tone and sound, and in terms of the guitars and everything, it's definitely got a 70s vibe to it. But the song itself is almost reminds me of stuff like Europe and Dokken, which is not a bad thing in my book at all. It's phenomenal anyway, and it's super fast paced, and it's going to be. I'm sure it's going to be an absolute live favourite. Because I think people, I don't know, people underestimate how exciting this kind of music can be, and I think it's, again, it's that attention span thing, which obviously is getting worse and worse and worse as time goes on, and we all spend our days masturbating over Snapchat, or so I believe. Anyway, I don't even know what that is, to be honest with you. Snapchat, not masturbating, I know what that is. But anyway, yes, so... yeah, the production on this album is glorious. It's the same brilliant mixture of kind of organic, warm tones, analog vibes, but it's also pristine, and you can hear all the separation between the instruments is great. That's a really nerdy thing to point out, but prog fans are like that, so it's fine. There's a harpsichord on one of the songs. There's a song called A Fleeting Glance, which has harpsichord on it, which I don't think harpsichord is used enough in heavy music, frankly. And what was the other track I wanted to mention? The Seventh Sojourn, which kind of reminds me a little bit. It has a similar kind of vibe to Atonement from Ghost Reveries, in that it begins as this kind of rambling, kind of raga rock kind of psychedelia thing, which is quite mesmerising, And I imagine if I was the sort of person that smoked soft drugs in a jazz cigarette, that I would particularly enjoy that bit. But obviously, no, couldn't possibly approve of that kind of thing on a public forum. So there you go, Opeth, Sorceress. It's out on the 30th. I recommend it to anybody that's got ears that work. If you don't like Opeth, Bit weird. I'm not sure what's gone wrong there. And if you do like Opeth, then you've already pre-ordered it, so I don't even know why I'm bothering. I mean, why wouldn't you buy the new Opeth album? It's crazy. Buy it on vinyl. That's what I say. That's what I'll probably have to do. I'll probably get a free CD, to be fair, but I'm going to buy it on vinyl. So yeah, there you go. I don't think any of us have learned anything from this at all, other than Opeth are still brilliant. But, you know, it's worth being reminded every now and again. Next week I shall be reviewing something else. It won't be as good as the Opeth album, I don't suppose, but, you know, you can't win them all. And thanks for watching this. Sorry, I'm really sweaty today. It's far too fucking hot. I've got the fan on, I've got the door open, you know. I didn't think it would be appropriate to sit here with my shirt off, because no one needs to see that when they're having their lunch, or any other meal of the day, frankly. So yeah, cheers folks. Come back for more Iron Sandwich antics very soon, and yeah, don't get lost or killed. Cheers.